Professor Siphamandla Zondi, who's the acting director at the Institute for Pan-African Thought and Conversation at the University of Johannesburg, joins us now for more. Prof, thanks very much indeed for joining us. It's pretty difficult to process for some of us citizens who don't quite understand what happens in these chambers. I wonder what your immediate thoughts have been watching the last couple of weeks play out, the Speaker being removed, and now the Mayor.
It is an idea that politics is a game of chess, perhaps displayed, perhaps to the excess of what we expect it to be. Listeners, viewers would remember that the mayor had just been voted out quite convincingly, had won the election for the mayorship in November last year, less than a year ago, for again overwhelmingly by 144 votes, and it kind of loses about the same time. The question would be, what has changed? Very little of what has changed has to do with her personally, but a lot of it has to do with the relationship within the coalition that was led by the Democratic Alliance, with a majority of seats, a majority of positions in this government, and there was an alliance with a number of smaller parties. It was an alliance that was meant to keep the ANC out of power, because many of these organizations were agreed that you need to keep the ANC out of power. It had had its time running government, we need a change. But it seems to me that they were not very clear about what it is that they want to achieve together, so that the coalition would work effectively to address the issues that they need to do. But it seems to me, secondly, they might not have fully factored the implications of the post-COVID economic environment that will make it very, very difficult for anyone who runs on the basis of part commercial enterprises to succeed. But definitely it's a situation that signals to the DA that it needs to think very carefully about how it manages coalitions that it leads, because it's now the third one that has come into this sort of trouble.
All right, so we're going to talk about the citizens just now, but could what is playing out be a warning to the ANC in terms of what might happen to them if they also don't learn lessons from the DA? It looks as if it's a really hard job keeping these coalitions together.
Yes, if you think about it, think about the fact that the ANC have mounted a really strong campaign leading all the other parties for the removal of the mayor, and placed on the table very interesting issues that are on the table. That includes instability within the coalition, and given the fact that the ANC has made this as an issue, you then have to now look at whether the coalition that has now come in will be stable. But we know that coalitions are by nature unstable. They're very unstable and all that. The second one is raised the issue of theatrics and a lot of PR that she has used. We will have to see how the ANC communicate to the citizens without using PR and all of them. And then they have raised issues, of course, around the city agencies that are in deep financial trouble. But as you know, almost all government agencies are in financial trouble all across the board, national, provincial, and city. So the ANC has placed upon itself a huge responsibility to be seen to be performing ahead of the national election in 2024 and ahead of the local government election 24 the other year. It's much easier to oppose because there is no obligation to prove anything you do. but it's much more difficult to lead, because when you govern, you will be measured by the performance that you show on the ground. And that's going to be the biggest challenge that they face. If they perform, perhaps that would help the ANC recover from its losses of November 2021.
All right, let's talk about the citizens now, because they went to the polls. I suppose in some ways they did vote for this, but did they vote for this?
It is the citizens that have put us in this situation right now, because they have indeed wisely refused to give any party outright majority, and has actually forced them to work together to show maturity that is required to run these coalitions and to try and serve the interest of the people on the ground. It seems to me that parties are actually failing that test in many, many ways, because a whole lot of what these battles are about are simply about political party interest in the main. Of course, they do use the language of people's interest and all that, but they're principally about egos, and they're principally about party interests. They're principally about jostling and playing the chess game in some cases. And the citizens of Johannesburg must look at it and worry. Worry about whether they have leaders that can run a world-class city and that can run it with whoever that the citizens chooses for them. Secondly, they should be worried whether this will not filter down and cascade down to the actual administration of the city and end up affecting refuse removal, provision of electricity, provision of water, enforcement of bylaws, and other things. One just hopes that with all these ramblings, we have matured our administration enough that the administration is shielded from the actions that are taking place at a political level, so that the political wranglings do not actually affect the interest of the people in Soweto, in Randfontein, in Sandton, or in the outlying rural areas of Johannesburg.
So are these politicians play these games of chess and try to get the throne? Citizens are watching, and there are victors and there are winners, but there are also consequences. And I wonder what the consequences might be for all of these parties, because what they've shown the public is that they can't be trusted, perhaps, to work coalitions. So what then happens?
Yeah, you know, the tricky thing here is that the citizens might find that what they decided in 2021 was then actually correct, because parties are not demonstrating that they can lead. If they cannot lead coalitions effectively, if they cannot live with coalitions effectively, perhaps it means they cannot be trusted to lead the city on their own. And therefore, the citizens might be encouraged to keep this balance even more, reduce those who are leading even more, and increase the votes for those who are weaker. But it does seem to me that there is no return to a one-party system at this level. We are stuck with coalitions for a long time. One just hopes that parties are learning from these actions and they learn how to manage coalitions, perhaps in a manner that the ANC did in Ekurhuleni, by the way, and until last year, and in the manner in which the DA did in Cape Town for a long time until it became an outright winner. They have to learn how to do it. And Mzwandile Masina, the former mayor of Ekurhuleni, wrote a book that came out early this year that has very sober reflections about the maturity that leading parties need in order to keep the coalition in power, because there's always a temptation that if you are a leading party, you have 48%, 46%, to assume you are a ruling party, when you are actually just one of many parties with a little bit more positions than others. But you are not a leading party, you are not a ruling party, you are just one of many.
Might the smaller parties, the ones that come with 1-2 seats, become the biggest casualties because they have to go back to their constituents and explain why they're flip-flopping?
And that is going to be very interesting. I wonder how these small parties are going to explain the swing from one party to the other party, voting this way and voting that way. They should have a way to explain it. And some that are not that small at this level, like the EFF, that have also swung quite a bit. It might be that the politicians are playing the game of tactics and strategy, and therefore don't want to marry their future to any particular partner, but want every partner to work for their relationship. But I do not know whether the voters on the ground will understand that sophisticated game and not see it as selling out, and not seeing it as using the votes and the power given recklessly to serve their own interests as politicians, rather than to bring something that is good for the people of Johannesburg. Because, they will have to explain how their changes of votes advances the cause for poverty eradication in Johannesburg. How does that all improve the provision of what all of that they are doing? How does that improve the lot for the people of Johannesburg? If they cannot show that, then it will be confirmed it was merely a power game, an ego game about themselves as politicians and not about the people of Johannesburg.
Professor Zondi, we're going to have to leave it there. Always good talking to you. Thanks so much for joining us tonight.
You're welcome.
Thank you. All right, that's Professor Siphamandla Zondi trying to unpack the events that took place today. Johannesburg has a new mayor, and that comes from the ANC party. The DA says that what happened today was unlawful, and they want it tested in court. So this story perhaps not quite over yet. We'll keep you updated on that.